just to maybe shift the topic here, because we have some prize visitors here today. About 2 weeks ago, I was at Mount Shasta, California for the second time, and at an event there. And as people who are into portals and consciousness, and people know that there are some stories about Mount Shasta. So I've interviewed most of the people from Mount Shasta. I have one more that a major person, Maddie, who's on here today, who I haven't interviewed, but I've done maybe 10 or 12 hours of interviews of the people and all the experiences that happened here. So I wanted to sort of get these people to talk. I don't know how many of them are here. I know Maddie's here, and Jan is here, and Mark is here, and Ray Dove is here. I just want to maybe take over the screen for a second just to show people who aren't familiar with Mount Shasta. I want to just show a couple of photographs of some things that these people might be talking about. Let me get this thing over here. Open. I just want to show some photos from Mount Shasta, so that you can see it now.
Start over, Grant.
Okay. So let me go to full. This is the bed and breakfast we stayed at. It's at the bottom. Well, there's not much. This is I just want to I want to show some items on Mount Shasta that people will be talking about that you need to see. Okay, so I'm just going through. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to put on the internet. I'm just skipping over. This is Enrique Villanueva, who ran the event that we were at. This is an overhead shot. Can you see this?
No, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
You can see the overhead shot?
Yeah. Yes.
No.
Well, no, it's
No,
not
we're
overhead.
seeing Enrique. It's kind of going
Okay,
slowly.
so this is an overhead shot. Wow.
There seems to be a delay.
Wow. I'm really having trouble with my connection here today. Luckily, the people are here. So I may just throw it to them. This is an overhead shot, if you can see it, of the Mount, of the what's called the sand flats. And it's up about 6,800 feet, so it gets very, very cold. Okay, so on the right, you see a road going through the middle there. The camp, Enrique's camp, was on the top where the trees are. And this open field at the bottom, this is where the Antarel 2 Zendros opened in 2014, 2015. If you just go across this field, you come to the next sort of forest that happened on the edge of the forest. So we're in the trees, and this is when I was there in 2017 in the same spot. This is where we had the experiences, just to give you an idea. And there, I'm not sure whether Cameron or Pete are here. We had a possible Zendro, which would be on the north side of the screen of this event. And the other possible, this is the entity encounter, took place up on the mountain. So this is at 6,800 feet. And on the Saturday night, Enrique and a group of 9 other people went higher up into the mountain. They got this message to go up there, and they had an encounter, which hopefully someone who was involved can tell you about. Otherwise, you'll have to wait. I've interviewed all these people, and it'll all up from my YouTube channel. So this is, here's the camp. Everybody's in a circle. Enrique, if you can see that. This is a photo of a being in 2017. This is my tent. I want to go to, I'm going to show you the door. This is where the Antarel encounter occurred, in front of those 2 trees. I actually stood in front of it. This is where the people were standing where the camera is, and that's where Antarel was in 2017. I'm 6 feet, so it was 4 feet higher than that. This is Enrique talking about this event that I have on tape. I managed to tape this whole thing. This is an event that you may hear about today, provided that someone involved, or I maybe tell the story later on. This event happened at 4 o'clock in the morning on the Sunday morning, and Enrique has been going to Mount Shasta for 20 years. He said it was the most dramatic, it was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen at Shasta. Enrique got some, the Rama people, the protocols rely quite a bit on what are called antennas. And Maddie, who is here today, sometimes I would think is one of the antennas. The object on the bottom right of this this thing where and this is first thing on Friday when he's talking about this Friday evening. This appears in a coffee cup. The symbol on the far right bottom side appears in a coffee cup from Caterina Castillo, who may be online today in Washington. And she was planning to attend the event and actually bought the ticket for the wrong time. So she's going to be there next week at another event. But this is the overhead. Here's Cameron. These are the two guys that encountered the first. What's that?
What's the purpose of these symbols that are showing?
Can you repeat that, Gregory?
Yeah. What is the purpose of those symbols that the guys?
Well, Enrique just got these in his mind. Well, he doesn't really know. He just what they're doing is what happens is with the Rama protocols is they rely a lot on antennas, and these are people who. So what they'll do is they'll go around the group and they'll say, you know, has anybody gotten any visions? Anybody get dreams the last couple of days before this event occurs? And the main guy seemed to be a guy by the name of Mario. Now, I'm not sure whether he's online today. I've invited all the people that were involved in Shasta, and Mario appeared to be the main antenna. He was getting these visions days before. He's the one that led the group up onto the mountain to have this this encounter with this being. So that's what happens is the Rama protocols involve a lot of everybody trying to pick up messages that they're picking up before they get there, cross-indexing the messages to see whether two messages agree. So that's what you do. So if you get two people with the same message, that's the what you're following. You're trying to pick up on these signals that are being given to people. So I want to show one more thing, and now I'll just cut off, and we'll see if some of the people are online. This is the wall. This is was discovered, and Ray Dove is here, and I'll get her as soon as I shut this off. I'll get her to describe how this thing was discovered. It was actually only discovered last year, and it was Enrique and a bunch of I guess you would call antennas who discovered this. This is a doorway, and you can see it's in the side of a mountain. And last year they found the doorway. They got all these sort of messages from Enrique got. There was a bunch of some people from England. They put together all these messages, and they managed to find this place. And it's near Mount Shasta on a near a falls there. And so last year they had a lot of discoveries, and some of the people may be here today. So what happens is people sort of meditate, they sit there, and a mantra is trying to raise vibration. And when it first started, on the Saturday morning, I would have said, this is a pretty calm event, nothing really happened. But as you'll hear, provided that a lot of the Shasta people are here today to tell what happened, actually a lot of stuff did happen, quite a bit. Like as I said, I've got 10 to 12 hours of interviews of the people that were involved in these various events. And this is just above the falls. So I'll turn off the share here, and I'll see if let me turn off the share. Hang on, stop share. Okay, so is Ray Dove here? Can you come on and maybe explain the door? I showed the photo of the door. Ray, can you describe, because you wrote up the report last year. You wrote up a 34-page report of what happened last year. So explain to people what the door is that people got this year, and then I believe you got a message as well this year as well as last year.
Right. So last year, 2018, Enrique was putting on another Rama event up in Shasta for the English people, which is really rare and unique because usually the Rama people that go to Shasta are all Spanish speaking. And so the English people going, you know, we don't get as much as we should because we don't understand what's being said. So he was wonderful enough to put on these events for the English-speaking crowd. And also other Rama groups would sometimes be at Shasta at the same time, and we would get together. So last year, before the event, during the event, and after the event, there were all kinds of clues or synchronicities coming in between different people that were going to be showing up in Shasta last year. And they were all clues or pieces of a puzzle about this stone doorway that Grant showed you guys a picture of. We later called the doorway the 12-12 doorway. And what this doorway was, it's not only a physical door, but if you go near that door, if you're sensitive and you're raising your vibrations, you can pick up on all kinds of phenomena. And some people even were able to go inside the doorway, but not in your body form. We went inside the doorway, leaving our bodies, almost like an out-of-body experience or astral projection of ourselves. And we did this in deep meditation, where we were able to go inside and and meet the beings inside. Some were having beautiful experiences of another beautiful place inside with rivers and flowers and such. The interesting thing about it is that 3 years before we found the doorway, which had been found by other people, but the significance, I think, was never realized until last year. And 3 years before that, even people from Rama were getting dreams, I think, of this doorway. And everything just led, I mean, just like a domino effect, listening to everybody's different stories as we came, led to this doorway. And so we took turns going to the doorway and sitting in front of it and meditating. And what we did, as in Rama would call it, is activating a certain area. So the most profound experiences, when I believe there was maybe 12 of us, I don't remember last year. Grant is going to put a link, I believe, for a report that I wrote last year, the 33-page report.
Yes, yeah. I'll do that. Yes.
And I would, I mean, read that and then it'll totally fill you in on it. But anyway, we sat in front of this doorway, activating it with all these people. We were chanting Rama, and suddenly some of us felt the ground moving, almost as though you could put your feet and hands right through the ground, like it was a transparency. And at that time, some of us actually left our bodies, and that's what I call left our bodies, and went inside. And when I went inside last year, which I wrote about as well, is I met a member of what he called himself as the White Brotherhood of Earth. And before I talk about the White Brotherhood, I think it's important that I need to note here that when he's referring, or when we refer to them as the White Brotherhood, it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the white robes they're always seen in. So I think people started calling them the White Brotherhood because they wear white. And that is why. They're very advanced spiritually. And I was able to go inside and talk to him. And asking him questions, which you can read in the report as well, and he gave answers. It was quite a profound experience. And then this year we went back to the doorway again, and again people were having experiences in front of this doorway because it is such a high vibrational spot. I guess the Native Americans would call it an energy spot.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you had a vision. I actually saw, I was sort of making it up in my head. I was like there, and I thought, well, it looked like this sort of tunnel, and then I go, well, you know, I'm just sort of imagining this, whatever. And it went to the right, and I remember it went down this tunnel, and then it sort of opened up, and I thought it was sort of opening up on the other side of the mountain, like you could see the light, and it was like you're coming out the other side of the mountain. And I thought, I sort of made that up until I heard other people describe this tunnel as well. And I think we've got Maddie here. So maybe Maddie, you can first. And Maddie and Kim are two of the people who had experiences this year at at the door, and they were, I would say they're sensitives. These are sort of like the antenna type people. So Maddie, can you describe what you saw, and then maybe Kim, can you follow and describe your vision of what you saw this year? And we went there first on Friday afternoon.
A little bit. Okay. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay, because wasn't sure about my earphones.
Yeah.
This year, the doorway, and I can only say for me, though we do share a lot amongst each other. This year for me at the doorway was a progression. So last year, I was able to enter and I had experiences, but they were more of a visual nature and had to do, last year was about doorways. Last year was about opening portals. Last year was about transitioning, making a cross, getting through a door and getting across, let's say, a connection to another place, another door. There seemed to be, for most of us, a progression of 3 doorways. And last year was mostly about how we all experienced those doorways and the feeling in our bodies and the doors opening up. And they were all different, as we are all different individuals. For me this year at the doorway, I guess I can call myself an antenna. I do automatic writing, but mostly for Shasta, it starts maybe 3 or 4 months before August. And what the beings that offer me this information want to do is to, they're always reminding and training. And they talk about training for our inner beings to be able to match their frequencies in the best way possible so that the communication is clear, so that there is better clarification. And they're always reminding and training us to stay heart-centered, to be kind, to feel no fear, feeling no fear and being very grounded, or, well, let's say being very neutral, is really, really strong. So this year for me, after all of the writing from last year and the year before, it's gotten easier. So to go in through the door, the picture actually that he showed you of what looks like a door is actually not the door for me. Mine is about 20 feet down and doesn't necessarily even look like a door. But getting into the mountain to speak to what I'm assuming Ray is also a member of the White Brotherhood, because he's always dressed in white robes, the traditional patriarch, with the long white hair, white beard. He just continued to give me more information, and we were trying to get more clarification on what I had gotten before we actually arrived to the mountains on what we needed to do there. And the information for this year, let's say last year was more about doing better techniques, but this year it was more about, how do I put this into words? How to use our own energetic Merkabas, our own energetic bodies, to correlate with something that they need us to do to make a transformation. And I honestly can't say, because I'm not on their level, that it is a transformation only in this area, this locale of the mountain, or are we maybe a part of a worldwide transformation, and we're doing our part at this time in that locale and all doing it together.
Beautiful. Kim, do you want to add? You had a pretty dramatic experience this year. Well, you had that one last year and this year. Is Kim here? She's here. Oh, your mic is turned off. Turn your mic on. Shasta, can you turn Kim, there you go. Okay, now you're ready.
Okay, hi.
Hello, Kim.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing myself. Okay, so, oh, there you are. So last year when I went up to the wall, I had no idea really what we were doing. I just knew that we were looking for something. And there were 12 of us, like Ray had mentioned. And Maddie started feeling along the walls, and she found it pretty quick as we were hiking down this path along the McLeod Falls, the Middle Falls. We chanted for several minutes, and Enrique had gone up to the door. He put his forehead and his hands on the door for a few minutes and was receiving messages. And then he came back into our half circle and he said, okay, I want you guys all to go up there one at a time. So I went up there and I had no idea what was going on. I just went up there and I went into a meditative state, and almost immediately I felt an energetic rush, like a rushing, like a sensation of moving forward, like falling forward, but it wasn't physically, it was energetically moving right through the wall. And I was standing on the other side of it. This was last year. I was standing on the other side, and it was damp and kind of dark, but you could still see a little bit. And I was looking around, and off in the distance on the right side of me, there was a trail, a path leading to a bridge. And the bridge looked like one of those ancient bridges. It had sort of an arch to it, big, magnificent bridge, all big stones. And I was asking, what is this? And a voice was speaking to me off to my right side. There was an intelligence there that was answering my question, and they said it was the bridge between worlds. And I thought, oh, wow, that's really cool. So I wanted to go there. So I started walking, and I got to the bridge, and I walked across it, and at the other end was a dark tunnel. It was black. It was about the height of me. I walked up to it and I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to start walking in here and see what happens. And as I was walking, I was going faster and faster and faster. It was as if the tunnel was moving through me. It's almost like I was going through a portal at light speed. And that went on for about a minute. And then I saw a pin dot of light, and then the light expanded, and I found myself in another place. And it looked very mountainy. There were grasses. I felt that I was at very high elevation. And the sky was blue. I don't know what was lighting up the place, but there was a huge bird flying around. And when I looked at the bird, I merged with the bird. And in some indigenous practices or shamanic practices, you'd call this a journey. This is what I would call a journey. And I started to fly as though I was the bird, and I was just flying over the land and marveling at how beautiful it was. But then my logical mind was thinking, you've been at the wall for a while now, and you better let somebody else take a turn. And so I pulled away, and I went back into the half circle, and everybody took their turn. And it was really profound for me, but that was the first year. And what was amazing was to be able to listen to everybody else's story or their experiences. And I had this feeling ever since I did that first time. Once that's opened up in my consciousness, that experience, it's always there. So when I go into meditation and I want to continue that journey, or I want to go back and have communications, I can go back in there, and in my mind, I can go right back to it. So it's, I don't know, it's hard to explain that, but time doesn't really exist in consciousness. And so if you want to do work, whether it's something that hasn't happened yet or something that's already happened, you can go back into those spaces and do that work. So that was 2018. And so this year, coming back to the wall with everybody was exciting, but I had no expectations of what would happen. I just was empty. And we all went to the wall. We did some mantra, and then we all went to the wall at the same time this time, and we all together we did a meditation there. And so this time, and I rushed through it again, it was that same sensation of falling. Only this time, there wasn't solid ground on the other side. I fell right into a river, and the river was black. I don't know what it was composed of, but it was flowing, and I was flowing really fast down this river, and I was startled by it, but I was being spoken to. There was a voice that comes in as I'm moving down this river, and it's saying to me, let go of your attachments, let go, like all the things that I'm attached to in this physical world, ego attachments and fears and all this kind of stuff. There's this whole process of moving down the river, a black hole with the water and me. Everything goes down this black hole again. It seems like I'm going through a portal. I don't know. That's the only way I can describe it. And then I get down to the bottom, and now I'm floating. I'm sort of drifting to the edge, and there's land. And as I'm at the edge, I want to get out of this, whatever this is, this water. Next thing you know, I'm laying there on the ground, but now I'm in a field, and the sun is out, and it's beautiful, and there's grasses blowing, and the whole sensation of it was very real. And then I start to crack from the top of my head all the way down to my feet. I crack in half, literally. My whole body goes, one goes one way and the other side goes the other way. And out of the center of me comes out this really powerful beam of light, and it shoots all the way up to the sky, and then it permeates everything, all around everything. And this voice says to me, this is your true nature. And when I tell you this story, it's the best words that I can use to describe it. But while I was going through it, I was feeling it on every level of my being, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, like the whole thing. I was living it. I was in it. And having that profound realization again, that my true nature is light. My true nature permeates existence of all things. It's a very different reality than the reality I flew to Shasta in, coming from being in the real world and having to work and raise children and being very busy and worried about this and that. It was really a powerful exercise to let go of all that other stuff, to really set the stage for doing the contact work. And in order to really come cohesively to do contact, different work that you individually to really let go of a lot of stuff, because what we want to come.
Nope. We've lost. She have the same internet provider I have.
Oh.
So, Jeff, you had an experience. Can you tell us? And what you have to remember, if you're running the group like Enrique was, what he's listening to is very carefully these people who are at the wall, who's getting communication, and that's how you decide. Because when Enrique went there, he said quite clearly when he started, I have no idea what I'm going to do this weekend. I have no plans. Nothing came to me. So he's listening very carefully to people like Jeff and to Maddie and to Kim and people like that who are picking up impressions. And that's how they decide what they're going to do next on the event. So, Jeff, I think you had an experience as well. Jeff Sell, can you describe what happened to you at the wall?
Grant, before you move on, are you going to give us a chance to comment on?
Yeah, we have to go through all the stories. There's quite a few stories. We're going to go through the stories and then write down the questions you want to ask of the various people, because we have quite a few stories, things that happened here, and quite a few witnesses. So I'm just going through the door thing. That happened on the Friday afternoon. And then we're going to go to this first possible Zendra event that occurs on the Friday night. So, Jeff, can you describe what happened to you?
Well, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My story really begins around the following night on Saturday.
Just to let you know.
Yeah, okay, you're breaking up a little bit, Kim, but we'll come back to you. Jeff is going to describe his encounter now. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. So after the circle got together, we did the oming. We did our meditations.
Okay, no problem.
And after 10 o'clock where I could start feeling things were changing. And there's a point where I can feel that the beings are present. And this was after 10:30. I don't know if I'm being interrupted.
No, you're good.
No,
I can hear you.
Okay. So after all the oming, I can start feeling things are changing. I can feel a presence of ET. And I was watching an area that was in front of me and to the right a little bit. I consider this, I'll refer to this area as the hot area. This all began about the time when Ray got up to talk to Enrique. It was shortly after. So whatever time that was, I'm not exactly sure on the times. So I'm not using a flashlight. We're in the forest. It's completely dark, other than starlight. And once in a while, somebody will be walking around with a flashlight. So I was watching a couple of different areas that were interesting to me. I believed those areas were anomalous. So the one to my right was the most significant. And I noticed that two people started walking up the hill. Now, one of those people was Kim. And since one of them had a flashlight, I was able to jog up to them, thinking that they were also perceiving something in that hot area. So by the time I caught up to them, they were in the area. I asked, it was Marcel and Kim, I asked them if they knew the significance, more or less, to paraphrase it, the significance of the area. I think they mentioned something to the effect that they knew there was things going on, like in a general way. I said that ET's right here. I asked Marcel to turn off his flashlight, and instantly I got a very powerful feeling coming through the top of my head, and it filled my body. I opened up my hands as if to connect or to project, and Marcel felt it right away. He said, he looked at me, he says, you feel that? And yeah, I was feeling it. And then Kimberly, she said there's two light beings in front of her. So if Kimberly could come back in now, and add to that, see what her experience with that was. Are you available, Kimberly?
Unmute, Kimberly. Unmute yourself.
Okay. All right, here I am.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we were walking back to the tent. Things were starting to get they were going. There was a lot of flashes of light and activity happening. And when Marcel and Jeff took a few steps to the left to go, Jeff was pointing out some things and they were talking, I was proceeding forward. I went about 4 more steps and I stopped because the energy intensified so quickly. My nervous system, something in my body got really heightened, but it wasn't coming from my mind. It's almost as if there was a higher frequency that I was interacting with that was adjusting my my energy, as how I could describe it. But I was suddenly surrounded by these billowing like clouds of energy moving towards me, like rolling towards me, up and around me. It almost as if I'm losing sight of everything else. And in front of me was a crystalline white, it looked like it was taking shape, and it was about as tall as me all the way down to the ground. I would say maybe it was like 4 to 6 inches wide. And it was, I don't want to say it was a being because I don't know for sure, but it was definitely a light intelligence that was expressing itself in front of me, about 2 feet in front. And when I turned around to look at the guys, I couldn't see them at all, but there was another one of those light configurations behind me as well. And I started to feel a little bit overwhelmed because it was happening so fast. And I was losing I couldn't see anything outside of this. I was suddenly in a field being enveloped by it. So I started calling Marcel's name. I said it maybe 4 or 5 times and he wasn't answering me. It was as if he wasn't hearing me. I don't know, Jeff, if you guys could hear me or not, but I turned around and I took a couple steps to get you guys. And I don't remember what Jeff did, but Marcel came and stood next to me and I said, hold your hands out. And it started to happen again. And the energies were building all around us. And Marcel goes, oh my God, this is amazing. And so we stayed with it for a few minutes. But then something kicked in with me that I needed to get back to the group, which seems really silly to say now. And I wish I would have stayed with what was happening. But I had to get my glasses from the tent and then he needed to get a lens or something. So I'm the one that ended that interaction. And then we went back to the circle and I wasn't sitting down more than a couple minutes. And then Enrique came and got me and said, I want you to come over here with Ray and tell me what you feel. So things were happening really fast, but go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, that was a very, like you mentioned, that was a very powerful and instant change in things. So I could see you, and the first thing that came out of your mouth was something like "wow," because of the intensity of it. I didn't see all the things you did. I saw what looked like over by you 2 poles that seemed to be connected it was very vague. I didn't see anything that solid other than that. And as far as how it ended, it was so intense. And I guess I don't remember how, what ended it, but that was the first time it happened. And,
okay.
Okay.
Good. Yeah. And Maddie, were you were picking up stuff as well during this? I think we're talking now about Saturday evening, about 10:30. And this is, maybe the 3 of you can sort of, or maybe Kim and Maddie can talk about this. We have, you're sort of given the responsibility of running this crystal initiation. You can maybe describe what that is. And the group breaks up because the group has got a vision that they're supposed to go to the top of this mountain. Mario's getting this vision, Enrique, and they head off. The group breaks up, which doesn't often happen like that, but the group breaks up and about 10 people head up onto the mountain to have this encounter up on top of the mountain at like close to midnight. And Maddie and Kim are left to sort of run the group. So maybe you can talk about that as what happens next, because it's a lot of things happening at the same time on that Saturday night.
Maddie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Hi, Maddie. Oh, there you are. Hi, honey.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I can give my part in it. So when we were in the circle that night, we were all doing chanting, and there was 33 of us, I believe.
Yeah.
So the feelings were really strong, and where I was sitting, my back would have been to what Jeff calls the hot spot, and so often I kept feeling and expecting a hand to come down on my right shoulder and tap me to say, "Come, come." Come. And it was so often I looked around a few times because I just assumed it would be Enrique right there, but it wasn't. So finally I couldn't help it. I got up because there was something behind me, and I started walking, and I could see Enrique. He was somewhat near a large tree, and the tree itself is where all the energy was coming from. And I walked up to him and I said, "So what's with this tree?" It would have been off to his left. And he said, "I don't know." So when I went towards the tree, literally, I couldn't keep my balance. I could not stand up straight. I actually grabbed Ricky's arm and I was holding on to his coat so I could stand up. And every time I looked at the tree, I'd almost go over. So I'm like, oh my God, you don't feel that? And I said, do you not see what I see? Because I thought there was something standing behind this tree. And later he said he thought he saw a silhouette, but he needed more than that. So Kim was there a little further over. It was a large area behind where our circle was. So somewhere in there, things were definitely moving. I went and met Kim later, and she and I stood there, and you could see the clouds of energy. You could see them moving. You could see a little bit of crystalline light here and there. The whole time, though, I look up to the sky looking for signs. And what I had asked for was specific signs. I was looking for red light. I mean, if you can show me red light, I pretty much know it's not probably a flashlight up that high in the trees. And later, someone else in the circle said that she had seen the red lights and that they were long lights and they were aiming up towards the mountain. But she didn't know to convey that information. So that was something that I missed. And what else, Kim?
Okay, so when I sat back down after having that experience with Jeff and Marcel, it was only a minute, and Enrique came up and tapped me on the arm and said, will you come with me? Ray is over here, and I want you to tell me what you feel. How does it feel over here? So I went over to Ray, and we didn't talk, but I was standing there observing the space energetically, and it was pretty strong. There was, I would say, maybe 3 feet off the ground, from the ground up, it was this sort of greenish light energy that was roving around the ground all over through the trees and the whole area which we were in. And there were rolling energies coming up and around us, and a little bit of little sparkles of light here and there. It definitely felt like it was activated at that point. And Enrique, after several minutes, asked if I thought that we could do the cesium crystal activation, which, for those of you that aren't familiar with that, in Rama, it is a 2nd degree initiation in Rama. And it's an activation that occurs between the ET groups that work with Rama and the people, where the energies build up around the person's hands, assisted and facilitated by the ET. And then that energy, when it's completely formed on the hands, is brought to the heart. And they say that what happens here is that the Merkaba energy is activated within the light body of the person, which allows the ET groups to communicate better. It allows us to have clear, better communications. If I'm missing anything on that, Maddie, let me know.
The only thing I can remember about the cesium, what I'm thinking about the cesium crystals, is that they are partly matter, because cesium is a real thing, and they're partly etheric. So it's not going to manifest like a piece of solid matter, but a lot of people can definitely see it. And when it's inserted, I guess you could say implanted, there can definitely be sensations to that. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah. So so Enrique was asking if I thought that we could do a cesium crystal activation, and at that moment I said yes. And he said, okay, good. I'm going to take half the group up the mountain, based on what Mario, what his visions had requested. And I wasn't a part of who was going up and who was staying back, but I stayed in that area. But what happened from that point was people started walking back to their tents with their flashlights, and there was 2 groups of people to the right of those trees and to the left of the trees. And then also all the people that were leaving were going back to their tents, getting all their gear, loading up their vehicles, and then making their way down the mountain, which took at least a half hour. I mean, there was a lot of activity. And it became increasingly difficult to hold up the field of energy that we had established originally as a complete group. The people that were left in the circle continued to chant the mantras and play the singing bowls. They were very devoted to that. And Maddie was with me. Ray went and sat back in the circle, but Maddie and I were both quiet and talking just a little, but really waiting to get another sign or a signal to notify us that they were still there working with us. But the field was very low at that point. The energies were still there. It just wasn't activated enough. And I only say that because 2 years ago, when we assisted Enrique in doing the cesium crystal activation, we had a very profound activation experience with ourselves and with the group. And we know how that activated field what it feels like, right? And so that's my baseline. And where we were a couple weekends ago, it wasn't there. It wasn't enough. There was also too much activity going on outside of that. So in my mind, I felt the criteria wasn't being met for the activation to be properly done in the way that it's meant to be done. So Maddie and I said, well, Maddie, let's go check out the spot where Marcel and Jeff and I were, because it was pretty powerful earlier. So her and I quietly, arm in arm, walked over there, and that wasn't going on. But then we walked up the hill a little bit, and just way beyond my tent, there was some flashes of red light. And Maddie, you said you saw it too. There was a couple of them that I saw. But I wasn't feeling like we were supposed to go over there. I was hesitant to do that. So we decided, to go back to the group and to let everybody know that it wasn't going to be happening. And I felt really bad about it. I really so excitedly wanted that to happen. But it was an incredible learning experience on so many levels. And I'm really grateful that everything happened the way it did. And I was able to have some communications with Enrique later about it. And, I asked him, I said, has this happened before in Rama? You guys break up your group and one goes this way and one goes that way. And he says, oh yeah, they do that all the time. And it doesn't always happen for them either. But one thing that I realized is that certain criteria really need to be met. And one of those criteria, am I still on?
Yes.
One of those criteria is I think that the group needs to be away from the campsite. We need to get away from that so that we can stay really cohesive energetically in order to sustain following through with that type of initiation. I believe that the ETs are they can only hold that field for so long. It's not an indefinite field that they're creating for us. There's a window, and we missed that window. But I don't think the location was really highly conducive for it either. But we did get a lot of activity within that 10:30 range, quarter to 11.
But what I
Maddie, Ray,
understand about the ETs is that what a lot of times we think are disappointments are that something didn't work out the way it should have, and oh darn, we missed our window. When you start looking back and listening to what people's experiences are throughout the weekend, you realize that things happen anyway. Maybe not in the way you thought it was going to happen, or the timing that you thought it should have happened, but there's a roundabout way that, even though I didn't go up to the mountain, I still got everything I would have gotten if I went up to the mountain the next day. In a very brief, very during the daytime effect, things happen when they're supposed to happen. And and that's my takeaway every year, is that you have to let your expectations go, whether you're in a certain spot or not. If it's going to happen with you, it's going to happen. So that in itself is pretty awesome.
Yes. Yeah, didn't somebody say like people have gotten their cesium activation in their tent? after they went back and
Yeah,
went to
yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
People have had experiences. Yeah. The most exciting part about it is just leaving your expectations at the door and being open to the process of contact and knowing that it's always different. It's never the same twice.
At least not for us so far.
Yeah, I even never had the same experience twice.
No.
That's for sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we have
Ray, do you have
that.
anything to add to that?
Oh, what were you talking to me? Was that for
did you have
Can you
anything
add
wanted
to the?
No, all like you guys said it beautifully. You know, the main thing is that every single person that went on that event that weekend had some kind of experience, whether it was an inner experience that was profound or an outer phenomenal, you know, with phenomena experience. Usually it was with both. Every single person came out with something beautiful about that experience on that mountain.
Yeah,
We
I agree.
I dropped out. Did we discuss the people that went up on when this group split up? 10 people. I think we have 3 of the people that went up onto the mountain, and Jeff is here. So can we maybe discuss once that group breaks away and goes up in the mountain, what happened there?
Okay. Grant, I didn't get a chance to talk with any of the others about this yet. I was curious. I was going to let you lead until maybe till you get stuck or something.
Okay. Vahid, I haven't talked to Vahid yet, but I did talk to Marcel. Marcel told me when you guys broke off. So you have 10 people go up, and most people know the part. There's a discussion that takes place. You get to the top of the mountain, and there's this confusion. Mario is leading the way. Mario has had this vision, and I haven't talked to him yet, but he has this vision, and the way it was described to me, he's going up the side of a mountain and you got to remember, this is like pitch black, absolutely pitch black. And Mario is racing up the mountain like a mountain goat, and everybody's trying to keep up to him as they go up this 45, 50-degree incline. And there's this discussion that takes place at the top of the mountain as to who's ready to go. And of course, everybody says, yeah, they're ready to go. And it's confusion as to who's going to actually have the encounter. Enrique has a vision that one person will have the encounter and one person will be the support. And so at one point, Enrique actually says, let's go back down. We can't get this straight. We're not ready for contact. Let's go back to the group. And everybody sort of says, well, no, let's meditate. So it keeps going. And then Jeff and Vahid decide they're going to go. So Jeff can take it from there. So you and Vahid leave these other 8 people at this sort of hilltop area, and you head up another higher up into the mountain. And then maybe you can describe what happened there, because Vahid isn't here, and the other people know what happened there.
Mario is here, Grant, just so you know.
Oh, he is? Okay. Well, we'll have to get him in. Mario, can you talk about the vision that you had and what you saw and the beginning of the adventure going up into the mountain?
Sure. You guys can hear me and see me?
Yep.
Beautiful. Good to hear you.
Yeah. So, yes, when we were in the circle, I mean, everybody started walking around. I feel a lot of movement, but I didn't feel the call to go and see what's going on. So basically, I was there and keep the mantra, keep the energy of the circle, and then I start feeling a little some kind of shark or something in my low back. Something happened in my low back and start giving me a lot of energy. I think it was the Kundalini basically. So the spark started in the bottom of my back and go all the way to my top of my head. So he was like a really, really strong. And after that, I feeling a lot of energy in my body. So I was like, wow, what was that? So I keep the mantras and everything to keep the energy on the group. But maybe 5 minutes later or something like that, I I was with my eyes closed and I start seeing I start seeing like a vision of a tree and another tree laid down on the same tree, so making a perfect triangle. I said, oh, what is that? For some reason, I feel we have to go there, and it was up in the mountain. I didn't know where, I don't know how, but that was it. And then I stand up and talk to Enrique. Enrique, I saw this, and I think the Kundalini is really active on me. I said, okay, so we're going to the mountain. We have to work over there, so be prepared. Get all your stuff and be ready. So I went up with the 10 guys to this point called Bonnie Flat in Shasta. So we went there, we parked in the car, and then I started feeling like somebody was pulling from my heart, my chakra heart, like a really, really strong, like, okay, we're ready, we need to go. And I was incredible. I mean, I have problems with my feet, so I really can't run on anything, but that night I was flying, basically. I feel like, okay, we need to go. So, and I was leading the group and everything, and it was a really, really difficult terrain there. So we get there, and it was some point, Enrique told me, Mario, where we need to go? And I said, I don't know, Enrique. We're close, but we're not there yet. And Enrique told me, okay, close your eyes and ask the question, where we need to go? And the moment I closed my eyes, they told me like up, 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 go up more. So we go up, and finally we get to the place, and it was, I don't know, 11:30 at night or maybe midnight, and everybody with the flashes, and I was looking for the perfect triangle I saw in my vision. So I was looking and looking, and then Enrique told me, we're really close, so let's walk a little bit over here. So we walk maybe like 1,000 feet more or something like that, and we saw the place. One of the girls showed me, hey, Mario, look at that. There is a tree right there with another tree laid down, and it was the perfect triangle. It was exactly as my vision. So, wow, we're here. So that's I can tell you until then, yeah.
Yeah, they were using you as the GPS. They called you the GPS, and
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the way it works. Is you pick up somebody who's got a vision, and you follow that person's vision, and that leads you to where you're supposed to go. You're interacting, and it was you they were interacting with. So maybe Jeff, you can take it from there, because so you have this group, and you're there where the tree and the triangle is, and then you and Vahid break off, and there's this confusion, and you take off and go higher up into the mountain.
Well, we had this discussion first at the circle when we finally got there, and it wasn't going that well. And what Enrique decided to do was that we should all go into an individual meditation and try to come up with something. So we did that, and at that time, Vahid had been seeing on multiple occasions a white orb from his left shoulder to his right shoulder. And this happened again while we're up there. While we were doing the meditation, I saw a white light on the right side of my head. In my mind, I saw white light. So it was on the right side. So Vahid was on my right side. So everything was pointing for us to move to the right side. As soon as we reported that, after everybody finished their meditation, Enrique recognized that as a sign that that two people saw a white light moving to the right. So Enrique just said go, So Vahid, he had a headlamp on. He jumped up and he started going up this incline. Now this incline, it wasn't a trail. It was part of the mountain that wasn't a trail. There were huge rocks, 2 foot in diameter, and the small ones, and they're all covered with vegetation. So he made it up. He went up about 50 or 60 feet. On both sides of this improvised trail that we made are steep drop-offs. So I don't have a light, and I followed Vahid as far as I could, and that was about halfway. When he stopped at a area that was leveled off and there were some trees, he turned around, looked at me, and said, "Are you coming?" Well, just prior to that, I had felt again. You know, I stopped there. I felt again very intense energy come in through the top of my head, filled my body. Again, I projected my hands out, and I could see what I describe as a rolling smoke, a horizontal version of rolling smoke right in front of me. I also noticed that on the ground, the ground was lit up with multiple colored lights. And now I've seen in contact events previously, I've seen white and red lights mostly, but these were every color. There were blue, green, amber, white, red, all the different colors. So the section of ground that was lit up was probably 5 foot long by about 2 foot deep. 2 foot by 10 or 5 foot. So all the while, this smoke was just kept going. I had a very good contact with it. I was requesting a more solid form. I was feeling very good about it. This is unusual. Usually, when I get in a contact scenario like that, I perceive it to be related to how well I can concentrate. This wasn't the situation here. This entity was there regardless of how I performed that way. So I had the opportunity, I felt confident about it, to look it over. I believe the zone that this was in was about 5 foot wide and about 5 foot high. And it just the smoke kept rolling. And I'm in communication, but he turned around, looked, and asked me if I'm coming. I said, everything's right here. You should turn off your light and come back down. So that's what he did. I said to him to put his hands out in it. And, you know, Vahid, I think, is pretty well connected, you know, but just in case, I remind him, you know, make sure you're projecting love and you're fearless. He put his hands in there. He said he saw the lady. Now, the lady was something that Enrique described earlier in the day, where he saw a female in white garb, similar to like a nun, with a habit and the white, all white clothing, and she had a USB port in her wrist. So Vahid said he saw her. And I cautioned, you know, I just cautioned him that that may just be what they want you to see. But I left it at that. And he then, I saw a red light the size of a pea at his fingertip. Just when I saw that, he pulled his arm back and said he got shocked. So I don't know what Vahid all saw at the time, what he was all perceiving. At that moment, shortly thereafter, the group that we left behind, they said they're going back down the mountain. They didn't know we were having an experience. So I mentioned to him that we're having an experience here. So Vahid went down, or we both went down to the rest of the group, and I asked any of them if they'd want to come back, because I knew the entity was still there, and asked them to come up if they wanted to experience. So there was Vahid and Enrique stayed back, Everybody else came up. Now this is what I don't know, other than Marcel was the first one. Marcel, he put his hands into the area, and he said that he felt 2 rectangles being pressed into his hands. You know, I'm by the way he described it, I would guess that they're like a 1 inch by 2 inch rectangle being pressed into each hand. And he could feel it, and I remember him saying that he could see the lights too. So at this position in this improvised trail we're on, it was very difficult. I got one leg on a 2-foot rock and one standing on the ground, you know, regular ground. So it was very difficult to get people in there. So I don't know how many of them were in the zone where they could actually experience things. And that's why I hoped more of them would be here at this meeting, because I haven't talked to anyone individually about what they experienced. So that went on for a little bit. And you know, because of the terrain, I don't think everybody was in the area. So when Marcel was, he was bent over with his hands in the zone, and then the smoke changed. It went from the smoky appearance to flickering light appearance, kind of like what I described as the back wall from a fireplace at night. If there's no light, you see the back wall flickering from the flames. Well, this was similar to that. The lights on the ground stayed the same, but the flickering started getting brighter and brighter. So I backed off at that time so other people could get in there. And that's about all I know about that situation. So.
Okay, just to add a little bit to that, I did an interview yesterday with Marcel, and he describes in fairly good detail his experience up with you. Mario's here, and Mark is here, and Jan are here. I don't know if they can add. They were part of the group that went up there as well. If they want to add anything.
I'll say I fell asleep during the meditation when we were trying to decide who would go up. But I did go up when Jeff said that the experience was still happening and invited us to go. And as we went up, I believe we stopped at 2 different spots up there, and we held our hands out. And I did at one moment, just before Jeff said, let's move to another spot, in my right hand, I did see some very small red lights in my right hand. I didn't feel anything, but I did see that. And I'd done the cesium crystal experience before, and I'd never seen anything. So that was the first time I'd ever seen anything.
Okay.
That was all.
Okay, if there's nothing. Go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing. When we were there during the meditation, deciding who's going to the encounter, so Enrique asked us, okay, let's close our eyes and let's go for meditation and let's see what happens. So when Enrique saw this woman coming, and I saw the woman too, but I was the crazy thing is I was with my eyes open, so I didn't close my eyes, and it was totally dark, and I saw this woman like maybe like a 1 mile distance or something like that, really, really far away. It was like a ghost, basically, far away. And then she came really super fast behind Enriquez, and suddenly she opened her arms, like I tried to embrace all the group. She opened her arms, and when she did that, I feel a lot of energy, like a boom, just direct to my stomach. And it was really, really hard for me, and I feel like I was puking, almost puking. And Enrique, are you okay, Mario? Are you okay? He asked me twice, 3 times, and I said, yeah, I'm okay. I just feel the energy is super, super strong in there. And after that, we sit down a little bit, and we keep the meditation. and I hear this voice like everybody was asking who need to go over there to the encounter, and when I was sit, I hear on my right side, I hear a woman of a voice of the woman saying like it's you, and I said okay. So I opened my eyes then, and I said okay, I need confirmation of that, and then that's when I thought Enrique's gonna say okay, so we need to choose somebody or something like that, but I mean for some reason never happened, and it's fine. So that's it.
Wow. Maddie, you have an experience with Vahid the next day. It has to do with these red lights. Can you describe your encounter with Vahid? I think it's the next morning after he comes back.
I can. So this happened with Vahid after we had all packed up our tents and we were getting ready to leave. But what had been happening for me since the day before was I was having pain in my hand. And I kind of thought I had maybe injured it or something, pulled something, because we had climbed rocks and gone down to the waterfalls. But it would come and go, and I couldn't figure it out because I'd get this shocking sensation down one finger. But there was nothing wrong with my finger, and I kept playing with it, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And over the next day, I realized that I was having pain at the base of my thumb, and that's where it was, but it was difficult to find. And it was really getting bad. So Sunday, we're in circle that morning, and even from the day before, there was something with Vahid, and I would ask him a question, and he was hesitant to talk to me about something in particular. So that's fine. When you're ready to talk about it, we can talk. And then that happened that Saturday night with Vahid, and I heard about it early Sunday morning. So the whole time, something's telling me you need to go put your hand on Vahid's hand. I'm like, well, that's really interesting because my right hand's hurting, and he got sparked on his right hand at that point. And I even ended up sitting next to him in the circle, and I kept looking at him. He was on my left. And I'd look at his hand and I go, no, that would look really weird if I just grabbed his hand and held it in front of everybody. But so I ignored it, which is what we do. We ignore it until we get hit by a 2x4. So took down the tent, getting ready to leave, and I'm hearing, you have to go touch his hand. Go put your hand on the same spot he got shocked. So I walked up to him and I said, I have to touch your hand. So I put my palm right on his, and I just looked at him. And within about maybe 10 seconds, this enormous energy came up my legs, up the back of my spine, until it felt like it filled my lungs. And the emotion that came with it was extremely strong. And I started to tear up, and I'm looking at him, and he has the most, well, I don't know if I wish I could have taken a picture of his eyes because he looked differently. He looked very, very differently. And once it was done, it was done. So maybe, I'm going to say 25, maybe 30 seconds worth. And I broke loose. I turned around, I looked at Ray, and I said, Ray, you have to follow up on this. I got to go. And she's like, follow up on what? So I left, and then one more time I came around a little bit later, and they're like, what do you want? I'm like, I just have to pass in your energy one more time. And then I went and got in the car and I left. But after that, my palm didn't hurt anymore. So whatever happened with me, and I wanted to go up to the mountain on Saturday night. Part of me wanted to, but the other part of me was like, there's no way you can go up on the mountain from 12 to 3. Because I had not slept at all the night before, and I was exhausted. So that's what I meant, was like, if something's supposed to happen while you're there, they'll find a way for you to get exactly what you're supposed to get. So I think that's what happened with me. I'm still writing about it and figuring it out. So
beautiful. Thank you. Ray, have you got anything to add to that?
No. that was it, you know. It did turn out later that Maddie, I think, only remembered it as 30 seconds, but when I saw her standing there with Vahid, it looked like minutes were going by. And I believe Kim and Marcel were standing there too, as well, watching. But what did turn out to be was that she received a download, and part of that download was regarding next year's event. She didn't tell me that, but then she left the camp. You know, the event was over, and 2 hours later, I had a experience in the forest alone. Everyone had left except for just a couple of people, and having a download as well. And it turned out, without knowing it, I had received the same download as Maddie, only with different details. We didn't find that out until we talked about it later.
So you're going to tell us?
Well, you know, mine was kind of a fairy tale thing. I really believe that when these ETs or beings interact with us, they're taking into account our personalities and our makeup, our own makeup. That's why everyone has unique experiences. And we are sitting here talking about it to everybody, and yet we're going, that didn't happen to me. And that's because you're unique. You know, you're in a state of consciousness and being with experiences that are unique. So, of course, that's how you're going to perceive your world. So, while Maddie's experience download was this being plugged in and zapped, mine was kind of fairy tale, you know, like romping through this fairy tale forest and seeing this light and walking into the light and having these beings appear, and there's sparklies everywhere and little wavy glassy, and then they start talking to you. So that, and then that was my download, basically. That experience was very, very visual and sensual as far as nature and beautiful flowers and everything. But yeah, essentially my experience, and I know I didn't tell many people about this, is that after everybody left the event, it was over. Everyone had left except for Vahid and Dawn and myself. And Vahid and Dawn were packing the truck. We were the last ones on the mountain. I suddenly felt like I needed to go use the restroom. There was these porta potties at the bottom of the hill. And at the same time, I suddenly felt that I was going to contact. And it's kind of an intuitive feeling that you get where you know something's going to happen. And I felt like I was going to make contact. And so I thought, no, I'm just going to go down to the porta potty before we leave. But then when I looked down at the porta potties, I thought, if I walk down there and then walk back up, then Vahid and Don are going to have to wait for me because it's going to take too long to walk up the hill, which is stupid and ridiculous to think that. But I don't know where that thought came from. But then I looked at the forest and said, no, I think I'm going to go for a walk in the forest instead. So I told Vahid and Don, I'm going for a walk in the forest. You know, I think they thought I was just going to go find some more natural facilities. And I start walking in the forest. And I still felt like I was going to make contact. And I was so sure that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to make contact, but I don't know where to go. So I start walking, and then I suddenly stopped and thought, to go for contact. And I did like, I believe Mario talked about, where your cesium crystals activated in your heart chakra area start to activate, and they act like a compass. So I stood in the forest by myself, and I put my arms out, and I just started making a 360 slowly. And every time I faced up towards the mountain, I felt the strong activation. And I thought, well, maybe. So I did one more slow 360, and I start turning around, and I feel the activation again. So I go, okay, that's which way I'm supposed to go. So I start walking. And then suddenly I started to feel the air turning colder. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And so I stopped, wondering what to do again. And still at the same time, the cesium crystals in my chakra area were really, really strong. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? See anybody approaching me? Where's contact, you know? What's going to happen? And I look down, and I see this fairy path. Literally, you would see it was about a foot wide, about this deep, well worn, with little flowers on the side, and it just kind of wound into the forest. I'm like going, oh my gosh, this is so pretty. And it's like the child in me was had been captured, and I forgot about contact, and I'm going, I'm following this trail. It's so precious. So I start following this trail about 30 more feet, and I came upon like a dirt platform that was about a foot high, and it was flat and about 8 to 10 feet in diameter, like almost a perfect circle. And it was lighter than the rest of the forest, and it was outlined with those purple flowers. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. So again, I'm not even thinking contact again. I'm just going, wow, this is so beautiful and special. So I stepped onto the platform, and there's no fear. I'm just so in like fairyland. I don't know what was happening with me. I step onto the platform, and about 2-3 feet into the platform, like Maddie, I suddenly felt like this thick energy going up my foot, my left foot, I believe. And then it started going up the right foot, and I was like plugged into the ground. And at that point, I kind of turned and faced the Mount Shasta's peak. And then my arm started tingling. And I'm looking ahead, and I see all these sparkly lights come falling down. It was like this beautiful fairy dust, you know. It's literally, I was seeing it, not imagining it. I was actually seeing this fairy dust coming down. So I look up, and I actually realize I'm in a tube. Like if you can imagine a vertical beam tube, and it's filled with light and sparklies and little wavy lines that were like liquid. And I'm looking up and going, wow, this is so beautiful. And I just felt wonderful inside. And then all of a sudden, about 20 or 30 feet above me, I saw this platform start to form that was very, very light, very white. And then I saw figures forming on the platform. And my eyes are open. I'm not imagining this. My eyes are open. And when I saw the people on the platform dressed in white robes with like gold around the collar, I kind of started to feel like a wave, like a rush go through me of like three-dimensional realization, like, oh my God, what's that? You know, who are these people? But as soon as I started to feel that, you know, shocking rush going through me, I started to empathically feel love and how much caring they had for me and of the earth, and the fear and the shock disappeared. And I was in such awe and feeling so wonderful looking up at these people that I wasn't saying anything. I couldn't speak a word. I was in awe. I didn't have questions like I usually do. And then one of them started speaking to me, and it was not telepathically like usually I get messages. It was loud, verbal. It was an audio inside this tube I'm in. And it was a deep male voice. And at the end of some of the words, it was weird because there was an accent that I didn't recognize. I mean, it was that real. And he spoke very slowly, and he gave me information, which I'm not going to talk about here, but he gave me information about next year's event, which corresponded with what Maddie had received two hours earlier. Then he spoke some very personal words to me, which made me tear up and start to cry. And at that point, he just showed like patience. He just stopped and listened and just waited for me to compose myself, just patiently. When I composed myself, he said some more words to me. He said that he started talking to me about my heart, and that they would be in my heart always. And then he gave me instructions on how to communicate with him and the others through my heart chakra, using it as a hub, as a communication. And then he said some more words that kind of made me tear up again. Because you have to imagine, it's just incredible love and caring from these people. They're so highly spiritual that you feel that vibration coming from them, and you can't help but absorb it. And our little human bodies are like, whoa, it's hard to handle sometimes. So you just tear up, you know. And each time he waited for me patiently, And he's more information. He said that he would be with every single person in this group in Shasta throughout the year, guiding us and being with us. And then I heard this motorcycle engine approaching from outside somewhere, and I kind of came to, you know, and then the whiteness and the sparkles started to dissipate, the people dissipated, and I ended up going back to the truck that was being loaded, and I thought, oh no, I'm late, I've been gone for so long. And when I got back, they were still packing. And I'm like, what? You're still packing? I've been gone for like 30 minutes. And they go, no, you've only been gone for 15 minutes. So I don't know what happened there.
Beautiful, beautiful story. There are a lot of stories that we're sort of skipping. I'll have to maybe skip over a couple. There was the one Cameron had and Peter had on the Friday evening where they go back to their tent. And this is the one that got Enrique a little bit perturbed when they told it next morning. They described Cameron, Pete was sick, so he didn't want to get out of his sleeping bag. And they're watching this light. First, the one light appears, then a second light appears, and he said it's about 16 feet from the other light. Then this, you're describing this sort of light coming down, the sparkling light. And what Cameron saw was this sort of light on the ground, this sort of a glowing, shimmering light on the ground. And he was telling this story, how he was watching this and trying to get Pete interested in this. And later in the evening, Peter said that something brushed by the tent, woke him up, and he was sort of saying, well, don't rip my tent. And this, whatever it was, had brushed the tent going by. And Enrique said, well, why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you say anything? And they're going, well, what do you mean? We just, you know, two lights or whatever. And this is because we had seen earlier in the night two objects go over in tandem, in a pair. And that is sort of like indicative of the starting of sometimes of a Zendra, where you get two objects. So Cameron had seen these two objects. He'd seen this shimmering light on the ground, which is often described in Zendra type experiences, or in the event at the top of the hill where these everybody describes the lights on the ground, where and people have to realize you cannot see your hand in front of your face. It's that dark. And when the ground lights up, it's quite noticeable. So he was seeing this, and so Enrique was kind of upset that they didn't notify. And that's one of the suggestions I made for next year is they need a bell. They need some sort of bell in the middle of the campground. So when something happens, you ring the bell and everybody gets out of their tents. Because the next night it was Enrique who was in the middle of a situation, as being described here. I think the message, and I'm not sure whether Enrique got it or Mario said, the message was the work will be done between 12 and 3. And I remember hearing that and I'm going, oh my goodness, we're going to be up all night here, like 12 till 3. Like, who wants to go in the middle of the night? And that was the message they got. So they went up onto the mountain just before midnight. I think they were back about 1:30. And then they did some more mantras in the circle to sort of give everybody in the tents knowledge. Then they go to bed. And this is the story that I don't think any of the 3 women are here, so I'll have to tell the story. There was Enrique and 3 women who are witness to this. So Enrique tells a story. He goes to bed. Everybody's gone to bed. It's, just before 2 o'clock in the morning. And he says, he looks at his cell phone and suddenly he's got like the 5 bars. And he said, you could never, ever get any reception on the side of the mountain. And he said, suddenly he's got like 5 bars on his telephone. So he says, well, what the heck? So he starts looking at YouTubes and politics, and he's sitting on his cell phone till about 4 o'clock in the morning. And then he decides, okay, I have to go to the bathroom. So he takes his cell phone. He goes to the porta potties. He comes out of the porta potty and he saw a light in the forest that was reminiscent the night before we had seen the ISS, the International Space Station, go over. And it was pretty dramatic. It was pretty bright coming over. And then someone picked it up with one of these apps on the cell phone and said, it's the space station. So he said it was that intense, maybe a little bit more, but it was in the trees, and he realized it was not in the sky. It was in front of the mountain. So he takes a look, and he looks, and he goes down to the road, And that's when he described this event the next morning. And again, this is where you need a bell in the middle of the tent where you go and ring the bell and you get everybody out of their beds, because he goes there and he said he looked up and he saw a city of lights on the mountain. And everybody who's been to Mount Shasta there knows there are no lights on the mountain. It is completely black. Everything is dark. There's no lights anywhere. You have stars in the sky. He said, and it reminded him of the story the locals tell of Talos, the city of Shasta. And it was totally all these lights, very, very bright. And then he's going, well, what do I do now? And he's looking at it and he figures, oh, this is encounter, because usually encounters will take place when somebody's alone. And so he said, well, maybe this is encounter. I'm going to have physical encounter. And then he decides, oh, I've got to photograph this. So he goes running to his tent to look for the camera. The camera's not in the tent. And then he remembers he left it in the circle. He goes back and he gets the camera, and then he tries to go and wake up Marcel, because Marcel's got the camera, the really good camera, and Marcel's snoring away and he can't get Marcel up, and he's running from tent to tent and he's trying to get people up to see all these lights on the side of the mountain. And one of the girls described at least 20, and they saw it. Enrique was running around trying to get people up, not knowing what to do. And by the time he got these 3 women out of their tent, and he said they came running out in bare feet across the ground, and they went there and standing on the road, and Enrique had his light and he was shining the light up, and they were responding. And he said, anybody would have the idea that there would be all these campers, like a whole raft. The one girl said there was at least 20 lights on the side of the mountain, almost like a city. And according to Enrique, they only saw it when it was almost becoming sunset. It took a long time to get somebody out of their tent to come and witness this. And they basically flashed back and forth to these lights, and these lights were responding back. And then this trail of lights, they said it looked like Christmas tree lights, all strung up, and this path of lights going up the mountain, almost like they wanted everybody to go up onto the mountain, to follow this path, that this is where they would go. And they didn't do it. And in the end, Enrique actually went to bed, and these women continued to signal, I think, for another 15 or 20 minutes with these lights on the side of the mountain. And Enrique had described this as 20 years of going to Mount Shasta. This is the most amazing thing he had ever seen. So I'll just open it up to anybody else who had experiences on the mountain on that weekend that they might want to share. And then we'll open it up for questions. People may want to have questions to some of the people who have told their story. To me, it started off as a very slow weekend, but when it came down to it, and after interviewing all these people, and there's maybe one more story that I want to add. Teza, are you willing to tell about what happened 2 days ago? Teza Lawrence, who's the one that sort of got me dragged into the Shasta. She was online earlier. I'm not sure if she's still here. No, Teza's left. Teza actually is the one that got me to tell you the story how I got involved in Shasta. She's a producer, a TV producer out of Toronto, and she was going to do a full-length movie on Mission Rama, and she wanted to option a book I wrote called Tales of Charlie Red Star, which tells about my encounters in Canada in 1975. And they could not get this movie financed in Canada because it was a Peru movie, and the people in Canada said, "Who cares about some bunch of people in Peru?" So what they were going to do is they were going to take my story in Canada, and they were going to have a reporter replace me, and this reporter runs around and he sees all these sightings and stuff like that. And then they suddenly discover Mission Rama, and they go to Peru, and so then it takes over. And so she wrote this whole script. It was all done. They were ready to go. She took the option on my book. It went for a couple of years, and then Teza got sick, so it sort of dropped off. But she was always still very interested because Sixto Paz's brother actually moved to Toronto, and that's who she's in contact with. So she optioned the book, and she said, "Well, are you this Mission Rama?" And I go, "Whoever, whatever you want to use the book for, who really cares?" And so she said, "Well, we've got a script. Do you want to read the script about these Rama people?" And I go, no, not really. I really don't care about these people, whatever, you know. And then what happens is Katerina, who I think is on here, wanted me to go to Mount Shasta to meditate, you know, for world peace and all this kind of stuff. And I go, well, you know, I really don't know if I want to go, but Katerina had helped me out quite a bit. So I decided, okay, I'll go to Mount Shasta. I'll go sit on the side of a mountain, make this 3-day trip. I'll go sit there and meditate and do whatever, and to support Katerina. And so Desta, who's is the sort of hosting this broadcast right now, came with me, and that's when we got the message. Desta's cell phone rang, and we got this message that the entity knew we were coming to the mountain, and there was going to be a program sighting on Saturday night. And I went to the mountain. And Saturday night at exactly 9:33, which is what 2 antennas had said, this event would take place at 9:33, this bizarre flashing thing started over my head. And I was totally sold. At that moment, it was like, this is the greatest story ever told. I mean, I've got to tell this Rama story. This is, I mean, just bizarre. These various groups that have learned these protocols that are able to, you know, predict these things and get messages and stuff like that. And it was at that point where on the same weekend, Enrique was across the road. He was running the second year that he was running the English. Ours was all in Spanish. I had no idea what anyone was talking about. I just put my hands up when people put their hands up, put my hands down when people put their hands down. I had no idea what was going on. It was all in Spanish. But I was interested in, because we had some experiences. I decided, I got to talk to this Enrique guy. And the people were saying, no, don't talk to that guy. No, he's split off. He's, you know, whatever. And I go, no, I think I'm going to talk to this guy. I want to find out. And that's when I contacted Enrique, and he sent me a 34-minute video of the stuff that was going on the other side of the road. And I became infatuated. So through the years, Teza Lawrence, this producer, and I have sort of kept track, and she still may do this full-length Rama movie. And she contacted me 2 days ago that she actually had contact on Thursday through a medium with the 2 primary beings who interacted with Sixto and Charles Paz in 1974 when this whole thing began. She actually had a communication with them, and she said she would give me more details, but she had an encounter. This was only 2 days ago. Through a medium, was talking to these 2 entities, and they talked about, she asked them, did you have anything to do with these events that just took place on Mount Shasta that she'd heard? I was saying there was a lot of stuff happened, and they said indirectly we're involved. They had this message, that the same sort of message that we're at a very critical time, that we have to make a decision what we're going to do. They're willing to help. When we are willing to do something, they're willing to help us. But it was kind of unique that all these things are still happening. And I think the people who've been to Shasta will tell you, it's not just when the event happens. A lot of people, some people will call it the hitchhiker effect. This phenomena will follow you, and you will, you may never have had an experience in your life, but once you have one of these experiences, then suddenly it opens you up, and you are sort of in touch with whatever this phenomena is, and you're getting messages. So, I'll sort of leave it at that. For anybody else who, I know there's other people who are on Shasta who may have experiences that they had this weekend. Otherwise, we'll just open it up to questions, because a lot of the people who are on today have heard me rant about Shasta and this contact movement and how important this is. So a lot of people are interested in this sort of thing. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to have some questions. So I'll just open it up for anybody who has something they want to add to what happened 2 weeks ago at Mount Shasta, and otherwise we'll take questions.
Grant, I would add something here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Grant, this is Doug and Judy in Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. Fantastic time. The energy is incredible at Mount Shasta. You feel it as soon as you get out of your car or wherever you're coming from. I have been told I had a deep experience of contact and appeared on a spaceship years ago. I'm still trying to figure it all out. This year, my one addition to all this incredible experience that you were all sharing is I had a voice speak to me and said very clear to me, there are no barriers here. And that's enough for me. I'm just going to get these messages as much as I want when I need them. And like Maddie and other people are saying, it comes when it comes, when you need it. And that's enough to lead me to keep on working with Rama and the group.
How many years have you been to the group?
This is the second year. I went last August. Sufi and Brian from our group in Eugene also came along then. Yeah, just my second year with Rama.
And you had asked for me to, I'm working on the report, and I'm also working on a PowerPoint where I sort of pull in people's, all the interviews I've done where I sort of put them into the PowerPoint, which I will do. You've got a group there that you're trying to get the message across to. Can you talk about that?
Well, we have a group. It's a private group. It revolves around an email list, and we'll be having a meeting to review all of this this great weekend next weekend. And yeah, we discuss a broad range of topics that are all cosmically related. Sometimes it strays off, but it's generally related to how we are experiencing our cosmic consciousness, our state of reality. What is reality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for doing all this.
Yeah, we have this on tape, so you can use this as well. Desta will provide you with, and we're gonna have it on. We'll put this on YouTube so people can unfortunately some of the key witnesses had other obligations, but we got most of the stories across here. So anybody else?
I wanted to share one thing. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Oh yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hey guys, bear with me here. I'm with my son today, and he's a little bit wild. So anyway.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, just hanging out. I wanted to bring up. I was fortunate enough to take part in Ray's interview with Grant, where she had described her, we'll say, initial message, or what I recall as being one of the earlier messages after we got together, in that the work, if you will, quote unquote work that we are to do as experiencers is shifting, my word, shifting maybe from the group experience as it's been in previous years with Rama and the like, to, as Ray described, a more personal interaction, and maybe more personal development. And I'm looking at Ray now as I'm describing this, just to confirm if this is in fact the case. What I wanted to share with you in light of that comment was, and I don't know if Tony from the UK, Tony Binns, is still here, but what I wanted to share with you is that he and I have been in communication since meeting back last November in Laughlin, Nevada. And the observation, if you will, that I've made relative to the stories that I've heard, the people that I've spoken to, and sort of the ongoing, the ongoing communication has been that it all seems to be very personal in terms of our own understanding of what we may be encountering. And maybe that's also why, in many cases, you can have a group together and they'll experience something that seems to be group related, but that everybody takes from it a very personal and special and or individual take on that experience. Again, being perhaps what's important here, that, you know, you want to change the world, it starts right here, right? This is the world. And the interaction that you then have with your corresponding group or your corresponding people. But again, a very personal message, a very personal, and this is too, I believe, why and or how, thank you, Greg, why we can so be moved by things that don't seem to be, they wouldn't seem to make sense to other people. But you go, well, this, you know, this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and the next thing you know, you're telling the story, which is a very unique story to your own trajectory as an individual, but at the same time seems to be tied into these group experiences, which then elevate your confidence in that, yes, something is happening, but that it may be in fact specifically related to your development and your choice by which to engage or not to engage these types of phenomena. That's all I wanted to add.
I totally agree with you, Mark. You know, ultimately, you don't need all the outer phenomena. All you have to do is be with yourself, take time each day, have a sacred place to meditate, and you will have all the encounters you will ever want and more. And that's really the progression that I think, this kind of phenomena needs to see. It's not seeing it out there. It's seeing it within yourself, okay, as in meditation. I wanted to make a comment on Kimberly's tunnel experience. I'm a theoretical physicist at a PhD level, so I'm familiar with Einstein's theory of relativity and the Einstein-Rosen bridge of wormholes. And one of the things in theoretical physics is they say that you physically can open a wormhole with a right amount of negative energy. It'll hold open the throat of the wormhole. But what is not so known is that you don't need to do it physically. You can do it psychically. When you meditate, when you shut off the monkey mind and just open to whatever may happen, you are creating negative energy doing that. And that, if you get that right attitude, that will open up a wormhole. And it's a tunnel. Like, it looks like a tunnel. You go into the tunnel. I can't tell you how many tunnel journeys I've been on. And I think, Kimberly, that's what happened to you. You came to a place where you could then cross the rainbow bridge, so to speak, between worlds. And that's leaving the upper chakras, the upper three chakras, and you go into the lower three chakras, where on the other side of that bridge, where you encounter the goddess and the feminine principle, the beings dressed in white, all this stuff. And somebody mentioned that they saw I think it was Jeff, that it was like a nun, and like their head was covered, and that's what we do. You see, we cover our head, we cover our logos ego, our upper knowing, in favor of making contact with the knowing from the lower chakras, or from the goddess. So I just wanted to mention that. Your journeys are very interesting, Kimberly. It shows that you have a certain right attitude to be open to the other side. And when you fell into that river, rivers symbolically are boundaries between one territory and another. And you cross from one territory into another, meaning that you're journeying into the spirit of your depths, into what Carl Jung would call the unconscious. So you journey well. And I studied shamanism, so I've done a lot of shamanistic journeys. So I know the territory, and I was pleased to hear your testimony. And Ray, you have an incredible testimony as well as Maggie. But we all do. And when you get down to the bottom, we all have these incredible things happening to us which we don't understand. But that's the goal, isn't it? To keep that channel open and gather our data, and then hopefully we try to approach it from a symbolic point of view and try to understand the symbolism in the communication.
I wanted to add something to what Mark was saying. Thank you very much. That's Gregory, right? Gregory.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Mark. Mark, I wanted to add to what you were saying. That what Rama is attempting to convey to you is that everyone has their own particular conscious impression of what is happening, what is reality. How are we going to create a higher level of consciousness? But it all melds together in the end. We all kind of lift each other. We work together. We work together as a group, and that's what I think Mark was trying to convey. I think that's what Rama is telling us, is that everything is woven together, weaves together in the end. All the experiences, and we elevate each other together.
One thing I'd like to ask Mark, maybe to elaborate, without getting into details. I think you had basically the same experience I had, that you really didn't know much about the group, but you've only been involved since last year, and you went there not really knowing what to anticipate. You did your first fast, and your life just suddenly flipped upside down after having one encounter with Enrique last year at that event, and how it's completely changed your life.
Thank you, Grant. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that for, especially for those that have participated in the Mount Shasta events, fasting, being away from the normal grind of your regular life, electronic devices, just the traditional distractions that we all experience. These things help us to create what I might describe or I've read about as just making the place for an experience to take place, and or your connection to take place to that, whatever it is that we're connecting to. It very much can be managed by the manner in which you remove and or choose to remove those elements of your normal waking life. Fasting is not a normal thing, at least in terms of most of our daily experiences. And yet you can do that, and it will inherently change your maybe vibration or change your sensitivity or whatever. It has an effect on your physiology and on your consciousness. But again, it's a choice that you may make, and or that you can then learn from through your repeated experiences. Fasting was entirely new for me, was freaked out about it, read a whole deal, and came up to the mountain last year with everything you could imagine and honey, in terms of just in case I was going to be safe. And here I am going somewhere 10 hours away, don't know anybody, not really a camper, no idea. Now I fast once a month, minimum of 2 to 3 days, just as to keep me into that place. Vegetarian, I went vegetarian in anticipation of the event last year. And I've remained, well, my daughter says pescatarian, because I still will have fish, only so that my wife isn't entirely upset with us when we go to dinner and only have a salad. But yeah, even that I believe has an effect in terms of passing, live tissue through your gut, requires energy. Energy takes away from other aspects of your sensitivity, all these various things. And you think about this stuff and you think, well, it seems to line up with Eastern philosophies and or practices that have existed since before there was the recorded word, right? So again, you go, well, there's got to be something to this.
Yeah, Mark, it's called, it weakens your logos ego. It weakens your gray matter knowing to fast.
Let's go with that. That sounds great. That sounds great.
Recommends it, But
what I would also share, and or from my personal observations, is that not only in terms of making a connection from the heart and or from your feeling, is that when you remove the normal aspects of our life, those things that we do all the time and that I would argue, take for granted, a meal, 2 meals, 3 meals, however many meals a day, when you now reduce that to no meals, and you're only on water. And I shared with Grant, I'll go, in some cases, I'll go 10 days. I'll go 10 days, only water. And on that 11th day, I'll selectively decide, okay, this is the day I'm going to break my fast. I'll normally snack all the time, all throughout the day, whatever. But I'll have like one almond, one little salted almond, put it in my mouth. And that single almond is amazing. Like just, you go, oh my God, I can eat 100 of these in a sitting and not even care. But on that 11th day, I have one almond, and suddenly now my appreciation for life and everything that I partake in becomes extremely elevated. I've said to Grant, your emotion in terms of your connectedness to just even your fellow man becomes one of overwhelming love and appreciation for. But again, you're putting, as I see it, you're putting yourself into that place selectively and or preferably or never, deliberately. it's not easy to necessarily go 10 days without eating, especially when everybody else is eating, right? And again, it is what it is. But to consciously choose to do so and then experience those effects as a consequence, I believe there's enormous learning and enormous growing that comes from that. And that may in fact just be the purpose. It's that attention to where do we show our appreciation for being alive, for being an individual with the ability by which to focus our attention and or our consciousness on areas that may be of importance and or of relevance to all of us together collectively, both healing ourselves and or bringing healing to the world. Where does that, where does that lie for you? Again, I go back to Ray's comment about it being personal. It's been something that's been enormously powerful in the last few months, especially when talking with Tony, because he's got some amazingly crazy things going on and photographs of all kinds of stuff. And what I find to be really interesting is as he and I are having our conversation, via WhatsApp or text message or whatever it may be, it seems as if our own conscious communication and or deliberate messages are now being manifested in those things that he's photographing. And it's really strange. It's really, really strange. But, that's part of this journey too, right? The interconnectedness that we all share and or the willingness maybe even in some cases that we have to share it. So
love you, buddy.
Yeah, you're somewhere around here. I know you are.
Yeah, so I'm just recovering from an operation, and so I'm in bed at the moment, and I don't look as good. Yeah, I will do, man. Thanks very much, and love to everyone.
Thank you, Tony.
Love to you too, Tony.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tony's another guy whose life sort of got flipped upside down. You only had your first major sighting, like 2 years ago. And if anybody saw the photographs that you take almost on a daily basis, some of them, we showed them around Mount Shasta. We were saying, take a look at this. Have you ever seen anything? And the people going, wow. It's like, so it goes, you have no experiences and then you have sort of an awakening and then suddenly it's like a waterfall of experience.
I wanted to add one thing too, and it was Tony's observation. We were sort of fast friends, if you will, in Laughlin, and Tony had made the connection to, at that time, now I'd been fasting since the August retreat in 2018. So now it's November. I'm on maybe my second or third month of focusing on incorporating fasting, and I happen to be fasting for that weekend's event. And Tony had made the connection between his operation from his Crohn's disease and I won't get personal, but just he now essentially is always fasting. He's always in a fasting state. It's whatever he eats passes through very quickly. So he doesn't have that need, if you will, for the energy of his self to be constantly digesting because it's gone, right? Everything's gone very quickly. And I think that, again, there lies some information in that in terms of our personal understanding of our bodies as a tool and or as a means by which to make contact and or have these experiences. We talk about portals, we talk about Zendras, we talk about experiences. And in very many ways, I believe that our consciousness, our personal consciousness can be directed and or shifted and or managed by which to be, and maybe I'm just repeating myself here, but affected very much by our physiology and that which we choose to impose upon our physiology, whether it be through fasting or through meditation or whatever the case be. My experiences started when I was in a deprivation chamber, which, and is in its own self, you're removing the sensory input from your physical senses. And yeah, I thought it was wild. And then it suddenly elevated from there. And the next thing you know, I'm having things happen that are not in the chamber, right? I'm not in a deprivation chamber and I'm noticing stuff and hearing things and whatever the case may be. But anyway, so yeah,
Mark,
interesting stuff. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? You say obviously when you're going away to these groups and you know, I've had experiences myself where your consciousness is at an elevated state, but then you come back to the rigmarole of your 9-to-5 job and everything else. How do you practice that to bring that home with you and carry on that sort of feeling? You know,
it's a great question. It's a fantastic question, and I struggle with it still.
Yeah,
and in many cases, the more profound the experience, sometimes the greater the struggle, because here you are almost not wanting to return to your normal waking, you know, type of life. I think therein lies, you know, going back to the comment of Ray, it goes back to that personal development, right?
Yeah.
Rather than look at something necessarily as, God, this is terrible. How am I supposed to make sense of this? No one will understand, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Maybe instead look at it like a means by which to gauge your own personal development. How balanced can you be between the world of your conscious knowing and or awareness when you're in that state and your regular waking life, where again, you know, we all have our schedules and we all have our demands and we all have our responsibilities. But when you recognize the relevance of these experiences, and in some cases they're very minute, they're very, you know, just sort of constantly, you know, the undertone or the current by which you're just moving along.
Yeah.
But to then include, let's say, those realizations when now you're faced, and like me, I live in Los Angeles, I'm in traffic, right? I'm like, this lady should not be driving, get out of the way, get out of the way. But then I stop myself, and I say, oh, okay, if we are all one, and I am to recognize that as a primary, and Grant would love this, primary message, then what am I doing if I'm showing some level of intolerance or impatience or disconnection in this moment?
Bingo.
So suddenly now my waking life has been affected by those realizations and or experiences that have existed otherwise. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. And again, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. But to recognize too that I'm entitled to have failures and or to make mistakes and to be human in my experience. Right? So as to forgive first myself, right? I can forgive myself for being limited in my whatever, because I lose it all the time.
Me too.
Yeah, of course.
But say, like, I've just been to an event in the UK, Conscious Tribal Camp, and actually through meditation, kind of had like an hallucinogenic trip, I guess you call it, deeply spiritual. And, you know, obviously around like-minded folk, and like you come back away from that, and it's almost like a bit of a come down, because the more I feel like I'm on this journey, the less I kind of have in common with the old life, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, yes.
What would you say you have to trust your intuition, or, you know, on this journey, you know, as a beginner? Because I'm just kind of starting to make sense and notice these little signs. And
I would say something to the effect of the ego is needed in the physical world, but perhaps it's not as real as we think it is.
Yeah.
We in fact may be far more than that, and that these experiences that we have shed light on that realization. But it's a transition from the physical ego state that we exist in most of the time, and righteously so, without these experiences.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's an evolution of your awareness, and then it's a journey and or a, what would you call it? Maybe it's your development to then incorporate that into
Yeah.
your physical waking life,
Yeah.
maybe more and more on and on, day by day. And
Yeah.
again, rather than view it purely as a struggle, which it very much is, but instead as that sense of, well, if I'm still having difficulty in this area, that's merely a means for me to then gauge how well or poorly I may be doing, but not in terms of being critical of yourself, just in terms of understanding that there's work to be done and that you can choose to do that work, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
In the past, I've had like some pretty, or what I'd say, negative experiences with entities, and had some weird numbers sort of that were blazing on my back. And I was speaking to someone at this conscious tribal camp, and they said the fact that my day job, I promote mixed martial arts fights. Now, I've recently come away from that, and it doesn't sit well with me anymore. And she seemed to think that because I'm involved in that, that hurts your development. And, you know, it's pretty mind-blowing, you know. But,
yeah,
you know, it's starting to realize all these things that, like you say, when you remove your own ego from the situation and kind of go where this river is taking you, which is kind of what it feels like at times, and trusting your intuition a bit more instead of ignoring these things. You know, it's like loads of good things have been released recently, you know, since I've walked away from this. And I'll be honest, I don't miss that life. I don't want to go back to that life. You know?
Jay, my favorite food, and everyone, my favorite food is a cheeseburger. It's a cheeseburger. I take my wife to the best steak house and I look for the cheeseburger. It frustrates her to no end. But that's my favorite food. I haven't had one in over a year. And the weird part is I don't really even miss it. That's the weird part.
Yeah.
But again, that is, as Grant was describing, the shift that occurs, and in some cases a rapid shift, right?
Yeah.
I'm more interested in talking to Mario personally about that feeling that he described even prior to arriving in Shasta that weekend. Because again, as Ray said, you know, you feel it in your chest, or as Maddie has described, whatever that case, whatever that may be, this is where my interests now lie.
Yeah.
And being vegetarian is almost unimportant relative to that.
Yeah.
Can I make a point?
I was just going to throw something into the mix. Grant, it's Lori.
Hi, Lori.
And I just wanted to speak to Jay, you know, in particular, but to the group as a whole. As your interests change in the physicality, your frequency changes.
That's
and
right.
as your frequency changes, you will attract people who are on a similar wavelength. So if you're older, well, you're not old enough, but that's what we used to call it. And go with the flow, and the people will come to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I make a point on this as well? Like, I do a lot of this stuff because I'm always fighting with people about the evil alien thing. And I basically contend that you sort of are part of the, we sort of believe that there's them and there's us, there's separation, and actually you are part of the manifestation. So if you take a look at the Rama protocols, I always pointed out is I defy you to find anything about evil aliens or bad experiences or whatever, because that's what they're manifesting. They're in this higher state. They're manifesting good things. And if you look at what happened at Skinwalker Ranch, you have guys walking around who are armed to the hilt, special forces people. And even if you go to they'll say, oh, there's people been injured, John Burroughs. And I say, oh, take a look at John Burroughs and Reynolds from Forest. And what you will find out is that one of the witnesses said he pulled his .38 gun out of his holster as this thing was coming. He was the only one that was injured. And we have to sort of understand that if it's all connected, then you will have whatever experiences based upon where you're at. And just one other thing I want to add about Mark is kind of a little bit different than the rest of us. He sort of, when he makes his mind up to do something, he is very determined he's going to do it. So if you hear his fasting schedule, it'll actually sort of make you kind of sick when you hear what this guy's able to do. And he does the float tank, the deprivation thing. Then he's into the vegetarian thing. And now I do a lot of dealing with him, and he's now getting into this sleep deprivation. The world record is 11 days. And so what he'll do is he'll fast before he goes in the tank. And his experience level is starting to go up and up and up. And that's the shutting down the sort of the ego, the physical popping out into that field. So he's a little bit different. He can do these kind of things that you and I would just like, we'd quit after about 4 or 5 hours. I was with Mark. I went for like 3.5 days at Mount Shasta, but he had already been going for a long time already. So when you're around people, it sort of encourages you to do it. I don't think I could ever have done that long a fast if I hadn't been with Mark on the mountain. So he's very determined, and I use him for my little experimental thing. It's like, well, let's try this now, so he's combining all these things to try to see what kind of experiences he can have. And he does have some experiences that the average person does not have.
Yeah. Grant, I just wanted to say, I think Enrique is here.
Oh, Enrique, welcome. Have you got anything to add, Enrique, or can you maybe talk about this experience that you had with the lights? Because I sort of told the story, but it may not be. You were pretty impressed with. You came to the mountain. Let me clarify this. You came to the mountain not really expecting anything to happen, and there was a lot of events. So maybe you can sort of sum up the weekend as you saw it.
Yes, it is my first time using Zoom. I don't know if it's. Can you listen to me?
It's working fine.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I was not expecting anything from this trip, but there is always experiences that happen when we meet together with the same purpose. So definitely, I was opening up for whatever experience was going to present itself. And well, through the weekend, we saw different manifestations. But then at the end, when we come back from the mountain, we did the work at 3 a.m., the chain of energy for the planet. And I was not expecting anything after that. And everybody went to their tent. And as I was trying to rest, I noticed that my cell phone got all the bars suddenly. For 2 days, it was completely without connection, and suddenly now I have the bars. So immediately I started receiving videos and messages and stuff that I was checking on. And for an hour, I was checking my phone when I felt the need to go to the restrooms, the portable toilets we have there. So I grabbed my flashlight, went to the toilets. When I was coming out, as I was walking towards my tent, I noticed between the trees a very bright group of stars, which I thought it was the Orion's belt, 3 stars. So I was looking at them because they were really, really bright. And then I realized they were too low in the horizon because the mountain was in that position. So if those were the stars, then the mountain would have covered the view. So immediately I noticed the stars changing intensity, like signaling. So I ran down the position we were with the camping site and ran towards the road. And when I get to the road and I look at the mountain, I was amazed because I saw like the mountain was covered with Christmas lights. It was all over the place, but in the center, the light was so bright that it looks like a city made of light. And in all the years that I've been going to Shasta since 1995, this is the first time I see a phenomenon like that. Plus, I felt that it was not just the phenomenon, but it was interacting. as I made signals with my flashlight, the lights of that city were responding, were flashing back. So we were like communicating through my flashlight. And then I thought about having someone awake. I knew everybody was really tired because from the beginning of the Saturday, we were in the caves, we were in the waterfalls, in the wall, in that waterfall we went, McLeod, and then we went back to our camping site. So everybody was really tired, and I knew that. But then I ran towards the first tent that was closer to the portable toilets, and it was Mario's. And I was shaking the tent and asking Mario to wake up so he can witness this with me. But Mario was really, really gone. He was snoring at the time. So at that point, I thought, this is visible. It's not a psychic perception. So I went running towards my tent to look for the camera. I have a semi-professional, it's a Fujifilm. It's not conditioned to take pictures at night, but I was gonna try it anyway. So I ran towards my tent. I looked for it. It was not there. I tried to recall where was it. I went to the circle of chairs we made in the forest, and I found my camera there. I ran back towards the road, and as I was doing that, I was taking pictures like crazy all the way down, but everything was black. I couldn't get any good picture with that camera. Well, I went to the road. I take many. The more I could. I didn't know if I was gonna get some of the phenomenon I was looking at. And then I thought I need really a witness of this. And I was thinking about my friend Marcel. He got the camera that is infrared, but I didn't know where was the location of his tent. And I was thinking, where is the tent of Grant, Cameron, and Mark? Where are they? Everybody was spread, and it was really dark. So I was like, no, I need to get someone now, because I didn't know how long this thing was gonna last. So I ran again towards Mario. Mario didn't wake up. I went to the next tent, who was the tent of my friends from Los Angeles. These girls were sleeping in the same tent. So I shake the tent and I told them, just one of you. I need some of you wake up and come with me, please. Just one, at least one, so you can witness this thing. But three of them woke up and they ran with me towards the road, and they saw it and they were amazed. They were shaking, laughing, crying. That was a really big sight. It was not like I was seeing it in the beginning with the whole city thing, but this looked like the lights were going down, and now you could see like a road made of light. It looks like a pilgrimage of lights going from the bottom of the mountain to the top, moving up. And the lights were still in different locations also. And they saw it from that moment on until sunrise. As sun was rising, the lights were going down until they vanished. I didn't stay the whole time. Until 5-something, I got really tired, and my friends were flashing the light towards the mountain, and the mountain was still responding until sunrise. But I went to sleep. I let them with the exchange of that communication through the flashlight. So that's the surface of what happened that night.
I appreciate your sharing that, and for setting up the event for people, because I think everybody that went away from the event was very pleased with what had happened and with the experiences they had. So I think you added an awful lot to everybody's life by going forward with it, even though you had some reservations about actually doing it.
Yes, I didn't have any communication before the trip. Normally I received something before, but this time I was completely blank. And I was thinking, I don't have any plan, and it seems that they don't have any either. So I was like open to whatever happened. I was honestly thinking about quitting this trip, but then some of the group that went last year started paying for the event. So I thought it's too late to go back and announce that I'm gonna cancel this. And then Katerina and Desta told me that you were going to participate of the event. So I thought, okay, that's a sign that we should be there. So then we had that experience, and it was beautiful. I didn't expect to have the experience of seeing that light. Honestly, every time I heard the locals or the mystical people talking about the city of Telos and this thing, I was dismissing the versions because I've never had the experience. And to see that with my eyes and having witnesses of that is really amazing. I honestly think that exists. I'm not sure if it's an underground city like they say, but you can definitely see it on the surface of the mountain. And that was interesting.
I need to jump in here. Can I jump in here? Excuse me. Hello. I need to say something. I need to say a few things. Excuse me. Hello. Can you hear me? This is Jean in St. Louis. Very cool. So first of all, yesterday I said, I'm about ready to stop this ufology stuff. I research all kinds of stuff, futurism, science, tech, health, all kinds of stuff. I met Grant and Shasta a year and a half ago in Arkansas, hadn't heard anything since. And I asked for a sign to continue with ufology and spreading the word about consciousness, raising consciousness to save this prison planet. And in my inbox, out of nowhere, the invitation to join this group. So first I want to comment on Merkaba. In my meditations, I have been guided toward the image of Merkaba has been popping into my head as important for astral travel, consciousness travel, what you will. And I want to ask Enrique, because you got here a little late, other people described that chain of lights going up the mountain, yet nobody went up the mountain. It was described as if a path leading up to a place perhaps to communicate. I'm curious, why did no one go? Because it was pitch black, everybody was tired, what was the deal?
No, you have to understand the distance from our location to the place where the lights were is at least more than 2 miles.
Oh.
And to get there, we would have to drive all the way up to the last parking spot in the mountain, which was closed still because they have like a fence, a green fence. So we would have not get with the cars. We would have need to walk. And at 4 a.m., I don't know if it would have been, I'm going to tell you something. When I saw the lights originally, when I saw the city, the big lights, I had a very strong feeling that the distance was not physical. Like I could breathe in and just feel that feeling of love I have and enter that space. And the feeling was so powerful that it was like I was gonna jump into the thing. But then I felt like it's not fair, this is not the way it's supposed to happen, we have to have this experience together. So that's why I went looking for a witness or someone that was gonna be an valid company for this experience. But the feeling was there was no physical distance, but that was a feeling, that was a state of consciousness.
Did you want to be there? Did you want to go?
Yes, but I had other experiences in the past where you had the let's say physical encounter because you perceive that as a physical encounter, but then you cannot corroborate that with anybody because you didn't have any witness, nobody was with you at the moment. So I'm not for that kind of experience anymore. I need the people to be with me when that happened. I don't care if I don't get the full experience, but if someone is with me, if we walk together through this consciousness experience, I think it's more valuable for the collective than just having a single experience by myself without any way of corroboration being just my story.
That sounds great. I have a couple more questions for anybody who can answer them. Maddie had mentioned that these light beings had transferred healing energy, had collected golden healing energy from her heart chakra or someone's heart chakra and transported it through the hands somewhere. And I think it was the pineal chakra. Does anybody remember if that's true? I just need one word to fill in my blank. Where did that heart energy go to enable communication with these light beings and promote healing as well? Does anybody remember?
I think Bahid mentioned that at some point during our experience when we were climbing the mountain, he separated with Jeff, and they felt the presence of this female energy that was with us at that moment. And he saw that woman approaching his hand, and he mentioned a spark of red light so strong that he had to put his hand back because he felt the intensity of the electrical shock. Jeff was there. He said he witnessed the spark. He saw the spark, and there was some kind of download because I saw an image of a hand, a metallic hand, kind of like the hand of an armor, but with USB ports. And I remember when I saw that image, it was the invitation to connect or to establish contact. And then when I saw that, I say that to Bahid, he mentioned that he felt it was some kind of download. Then I think it was Mari next day, she was talking to Bahid, and when she touched him, she said that she felt an activation, like it was something download to her, into her heart through Bahid, the one that had the experience. So that's what I remember from that. I didn't have that experience specifically, but I remember they mentioned that.
Thanks. Very helpful. Finally, what's a Zendra experience? It's a term I'm unfamiliar with. Zendra.
Well, Zendra is supposed to be a doorway, interdimensional. It can go also through space, long distances. Many people in Rama, they feel they have the experience of going through one of these portals into one of the bases of these aliens, or even into their planets. Personally, I didn't have that experience, but when I entered a Zendra, I've experienced initiation, the reception of energy, or exchange with them, sometimes holographic forms appearing, and sometimes physical encounters with them. But being transported, for me, no. The closest I've been to that transportation was this time in front of the lights of Telos. I don't know if that's the name, but the locals call it like that, City of Telos.
Thanks again. And thanks everybody for welcoming me in. This has been great.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just a point on the Zendra. There seemed to be, I noticed this time, when you had these encounters, both the one that Cameron described on the Friday night and the one up on the mountain on Saturday, is this idea where the ground sort of lights up. So it's that's my impression of whatever this intelligence is, that they're not flying here across time and space in little tin cans. They're using this sort of way to pop in and pop out. And a lot of times when people describe the encounter with the being, they'll describe this twinkling light, the lights on the ground, almost as if that's how it's sort of, they're moving from their vibration to our vibration, or whatever is going on, that you always have these things. And so we describe it as portals, and they have the special term that they use as a Zendra.
Yes, the phenomena comes with the light in the ground, or some kind of energy coming up. Sometimes you can witness it as a small cloud at the level of the ground. Sometimes it's very visible as a dome of light. Sometimes it's just something really subtle that you can barely perceive, but you feel the energy. And yeah, sometimes you are going to see lights coming close to the ground, and then the ground is going to become more fluorescent kind of emission of light. And then, you know, at that location, they are forming that special place to exchange, because we now approach the place and we exchange with them. The night of Saturday, that formation was getting there. And Kim told me that when the group separated, she felt the energy went down. That can happen also. It happens a lot in the experience of Rama. And it's important at the time to raise the vibration, to meditate together, to focus our attention in the mantras, and that helps a lot to bring that energy, the collective intention, into the doorway to propitiate the encounter.
Yeah, it's almost symbolic of the state of politics, whether it be in the United States or around the world, is that when you are in oneness state, you can raise the vibration, and when everybody starts going in their own direction and doing their own thing, and in conflict, then the vibration falls down and you go the opposite way. Can I ask you a question? Because Maddie and Ray both described the fact that they had a sort of a vision of next year. So it looks like you're hooked into having to do it again next year. As somebody who deals with this stuff all the time, what do you see? Whatever this intelligence is, where do you think they want us to go? What do you think is the main message that we need to remember from all these events? We see all the, like, I always call it the circus, where, it's like Jesus walking on water, healing people. Well, you get the circus events that people are very interested in, seeing things and beings and lights and stuff like that. But in the end, there's an overall message. What do you think the message that we should take away from all these events is?
You will grow up and you will become like us.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Do you think we have hope? Because I mean, this is you have people who believe that we're sort of on they're here to warn us. We're sort of on the verge. Do you think we're making progress, or is it an individual thing where everybody does it on their own and you do it the best you can with what you got?
I think that what we perceive is not what they are saying. I think it goes through our own filters of interpretation. We are like kids in a kindergarten trying to read and understand their parents. And we saw these lights, these shining things, and we got entertained a little bit. But we are being trained to become like our parents, more independent, more free, more aware of our surroundings. So I feel they are doing that. And beyond they are extraterrestrials or interdimensionals or whatever they are, I think they have a really good intention. Intentions that many times we misread or misinterpret. So that's why we need to work a lot with our own egos and the way we interact between us as humans. Yeah. So it's a work, it's a hard work for us. For them, it's like natural, normal.
Do they ever use terms like awakening? And do they talk about a transition from 3D to 5D? The Rama group?
In the experience of Rama, they talk from the transition of 3D to 4D. They say is the next step in evolution, to enter a fourth dimension of consciousness, which means to transcend our perception of time. And once we get into that position, then things shift. The next step is not the fifth. They say from fourth, we can jump into seventh. We have that ability. So from third dimension, we see a path that is congruent, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. But when you are in fourth, you don't have that limitation of seeing a sequential step by step. From fourth, because you are out of time, you can jump from different perspectives. That's why we are supposed to jump from fourth into seventh, or that is what the Ramas received through these years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Fascinating. Any other questions or?
I have a question for Ray and Enrique and anyone else on here. What were the messages that you received pertaining to next year? Was there anything that you guys can share in your messages that you were getting?
No, I don't want to say what they are. I gave the information to the correct people, and everything is in a work in progress. Things could change, more messages could come in, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Thank you, Ray. Honestly, I don't know what are we gonna do next year. I haven't received anything yet, but from the experience in the mountain, when I saw those lights, I felt that was an invitation. And like I said, I could have given the step up and having more. And I think that's a pending experience for all of us. And yesterday I was telling this experience to my friend Horacio Faveiro. He's from Uruguay, an old Rama guy. And he told me the same. He felt it's an invitation, we have to go back. He felt that something is building up in Shasta for us. And the only thing I receive about the years to come is 2021. Something interesting is going to happen in the United States in 2021. That's all. I cannot clarify what is it. It's always very vague, but normally when they point at a date, it's something interesting going to happen. Yeah. I'm not saying bad or good. I'm just saying something that is going to shake consciousness. That's what matters for them.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to say that after being there this past year and the years before that, the mountain never leaves me. It's always in my field. It's in my consciousness. And the work can continue whether we're on the mountain or we're not on the mountain through our meditation practice and our spiritual practices. All we have to do is just get quiet and get coherent with being there, and then we can continue that work, and we can receive messages and guidance, and continue to do our spiritual practices that help us, like fasting or yogic practices or breath practices, meditation, whatnot, to maintain that coherency with our group, with each other, and with whatever's going to be coming ahead, and staying empty and open to being in the flow of whatever is guiding us. Those are my thoughts. Yay. Yeah. Grant, this is wonderful. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you to Enrique for making it possible for all of us to go there and have these experiences, and for I guess we should warn people. I mean, for people who aren't used to it, I mean, you were doing the Kundalini yoga type stuff, which was, when you haven't done it before, was kind of trying, and the exercises were kind of trying, and it got us into the right state. So it's, people think it's kind of like a circus where it's all entertaining. You have to realize a lot of it is really got nothing to do with the lights. It's got to do with meditation, with getting, one with yourself, and these kind of understandings. And that it can be very cold, very dark. Somebody actually referred to it the other day as being practicing being a monk, and that's sort of what it is. It's almost like a spiritual practice, which is not what you think it is. So people will hear Shasta and they'll think all sorts of bizarre things, and it's like a circus. But in my view, it is really about yourself waking up, and that you see that with what happened to me, what happened to Mark, is that you can go there expecting one thing, it's completely different, and it completely changes your life. And for that, I thank Enrique, and also the girls that help him and do this kind of stuff, and the people who got the messages and guided us through that weekend.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you also for being there. And I promise you, things are going to change, because we really need a different way to manage things. And I've been taking note of every advice everybody gave during this event. I think we need to shift a little bit the way we work, so we can have the experiences together, at least the people that want to live the experience. Because it was a shame that I couldn't wake up more people that night to see that. It would have been great if most of the camping would have seen that. But the strange thing is, a friend of mine was with her camping site in the opposite direction of the sunflag. Her name is, she's Suyapa. She's from Central America. And she was with a group of 12 or 16 people. And she was sleeping in the car, and she woke up at 4 a.m. also, the time I was having the sighting in the mountain. And she said that from the car, she saw a light very bright on top of the mountain going down, and that's all she remembers. she never saw the light or the other things that with the girls I was looking at. So that was strange. From different locations, she got a different perspective. There was a phenomenon, but she witnessed it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that with some of the Zendras that I started. You can clarify if this is right, that when you may have like 5 people inside having an encounter, but nobody has the same encounter. Everybody has an individual experience, even though they're in the same sort of, say, inside a Zendra where there's a being or whatever. That's what I recall, is that everybody when I interviewed them, everybody was having a completely different experience. They would see the same thing, but the messages were different. It's almost like 7 different experiences.
Exactly, yeah. And I saw
that comes down to almost like your filters.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we expect to see, we tend to accommodate to the perception of the phenomenon. I saw a city of light. When my friends arrived, it was a road in the mountain made of light. So that's interesting, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, the only thing I would encourage, and that was I mentioned after, is you need like a bell in the middle, because everybody's waiting for something to happen, and it's like if it goes off at 2 o'clock in the morning, then it's like everybody knows it's like, oh, something's happening, let's go. So that, but I'm glad that you are open to, you go with the flow in terms of changing things that you need to change and to make a better experience for everybody. So and again, I really appreciate all that you did to make this happen.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
And just a little final note. I know I came in really late, everyone. I was working, but hi, it's Joan from the UK here. But I just wondered, I just put a note in the chat that in 2014, and I've spoken about this before a little while ago, I saw this Orion's belt, Enrique. And I'm not prone to seeing stuff at all. And I saw that when I was starting a radio show that night about interviewing people like yourselves and all the rest of that, and I just said, "Come on, guys, give me a sign." And I didn't think about the location of what looked to me like the Orion's belt. I just accepted it for what it looked like. And as I'm sort of looking and having this thought about communication and contact, which was only kind of brief, because I had to get back to start the show, the left one went left, the one in the center went center and above my head, and the one on the right went to the right but stayed within my frame of vision. And my jaw kind of dropped, and I thought, oh, okay, thank you, I see that. And I'm just wondering, hearing that again, or hearing the Orion's belt symbology and idea, I wonder if that might be a kind of motif, something that might start coming up as something to be aware of. It's just a thought, because I thought that was very strange. Anyway, I'll leave that open to what anybody has any thoughts about, but just interesting that Enrique saw that too.
Yeah, it's interesting to mention that. I think it was Robert Bauval, the one that speak about the Orion's belt with the pyramids, the alignment, was he?
Yes. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval.
Yes, and well, we saw pyramids. We worked with the formation of pyramids, interlacing pyramids with the Merkaba. When we went to the wall in MacLeod, when we touched the thing, many of us saw a pyramid underground. So maybe it is related to the 3 stars of the Orion's belt, well, the ones visible from our perspective. But yeah, maybe it is related. That's the thing. We have to build up this puzzle to understand the whole picture. So everybody's perspective is gonna fill in one position of this this puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Guys, Grant just had to leave, and so he asked me to shut it down. I just wanted to ask, Enrique, do you have anything else as final comments here before we shut it down?
Thank you, Desta. No, I was just drawing. I was thinking about the question about Orion's belt, and I just let it flow, and I got this thing. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Okay.
So
Can you show it again, Enrique? Could you show it again, the camera?
Oh, yeah, show one more time.
Golden Gate Bridge.
So Orion's belt is kind of like a bridge, it seems. So that's it for me. Thank you very much, guys. I hope to see you soon. Thank you, Grant, Desta, Katarina, and all of you that are here. Jan, Kim, Doug, Yuri, Jan.
Thank you, Enrique.
Glad to see you again.
We're looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah, hope to see you soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Blessings, everyone.
Thank you, Enrique.
Blessings to everyone. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.